Yo, thanks for tapping in to Welcome to the Jungle's Connection Unplugged, a podcast where we dive deep into the beautiful complexities of relationships. I'm your host, Hardway. Today, we're going to dive right and explore the fascinating world of human connections, love, and everything that makes our heart beat just a little bit faster. Relationships are the cornerstone of our lives. They can be joyous, challenging, thrilling, and sometimes heartbreaking. But one thing's for sure, they are what makes us human. Join me as we go on this journey to unpack the secrets, the science, and the stories of relationships. Today's episode is about the power of vulnerability. We live in a world where often we feel the pressure to appear strong and seem invincible. But what if I told you that, tell people all the time, like, what if I told you that embracing vulnerability is actually the key to forging a deeper, more meaningful connection with people? And that's what we kind of live for, right? We live to have connections with other human beings. Sometimes they're negative connections, sometimes they're positive connections. Most of the time, they should be looked at as a learning experience so that you can, learn how to deal with different human interactions and learn how to properly interact with human beings, properly enter into action with opportunities. You know what I mean? Because if you can't interact with people, I don't believe that you can interact with opportunities too well. You're taking things for granted, taking life for granted. Like, you got to wake up today. Life didn't choose some people today. Life choose you. To say that I have to go to work, you should say that you get to go to work. As soon as you wake up with immediate gratitude, that's when your life starts to change. You're grateful for another life. Like, if you took $1 million, seeing somebody say, would you take $1 million? You make $1 million such a big thing. You want to chase $1 million and get $1 million in sales, $1 million a year in sales. Would you trade that for your life? You know what I mean? Like, okay, you take this $1 million. Yeah, of course I take this $1 million. But today you can't wake up. And then you'll start to make a real life decision on whether or not that $1 million really is important or not. So when you be able to embrace your vulnerability, and that's the real actually key to actually forging a deeper connection with other individuals so that you can learn about them and learn about yourself as well. You can't really put a price tag on that. All right, so like vulnerability, why vulnerability is so important in relationships, right? Vulnerability is the raw, unfiltered version of ourselves. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we show ourselves to others without fear of judgment. Without fear of judgment. This honestly opened up doors to genuine emotional connections. In fact, research shows that vulnerability is the foundation in trust in any relationship. You have to be vulnerable to trust, right? So, but make no mistake, vulnerability can be scary. But we don't like to deal with problems. We like to deal with solutions, right? There's no losses, there's only lessons. So we can find a solution within anything, right? So vulnerability can be a daunting thing, but it's essential to remember that we are all imperfect beings. We are all imperfect beings. And it's okay to show ourselves and to show our flaws. Start small. Start small, right? So let's be solution based. Let's start small. Small pieces of yourself. Share small pieces of yourself with somebody that you trust, you genuinely trust. And gradually you'll start to see them to accept and they support you, and becomes easier for you to even open up a little bit more in the future. So I want to share my experience with vulnerability. When I opened up to my partner about my insecurities, I was afraid that she would think less of me. But to my surprise, she embraced me even more. It brought us closer together, and I realized that being vulnerable was actually truly liberating, especially for a guy, right? Especially for a man. We're taught to be so struff, like I said, invincible. Taught to have this such a tough exterior to where, we put up a guard. And honestly, it makes our ladies act step into a more masculine role to have to deal with that, because I believe that men are just, they're exercising more of the femininity traits, but just the emotional intelligence, and not having the emotional intelligence to have proper conflict resolution, and then it's a lot of arguing. It's a lot of, it's a lot of back and forth with, I feel like, with men that's like in some kind of like competition with women and stuff. And you know what I mean? And that's just how I feel, So, when you have one too many of the one thing, right? Too much masculine energy, too much feminine energy, you are off balance. You have to have equal, you know what I mean? You have to have equal balance. So, it's a slippery slope, but I believe that, it can be truly liberating to become, more vulnerable with your partner. That's when you get to experience more of a deeper, like I said, like a deeper connection. And that's something you really can't put a price tag on. You know what I mean? So ladies, so I'm going to talk to y'all. This is specifically for y'all. It's important and it's very essential to remember that vulnerability is a two-way street. Vulnerability is a two-way street. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, it encourages others to open up. So if you can't figure out how to get that male to open up, how that guarded male is there and seem like it's not in tune with you or nothing, it's not because he probably don't want to be. It's because you don't really know how, or you haven't experienced that because you have to been guarded for so long with his emotions, feelings, even things in the street, things that he probably want to get off his chest that he can't tell anybody, things that he have to suffer alone. You know what I mean? So remember, vulnerability is a two-way street. So if you want that man to open up to you, then, you got to bring out the God in him. That means you got to know the goddess inside yourself. Now, that there's myths out there, right? So it's a lot of myths. So let's talk about like debunking some of these relationship myths that people believe that, like, one of the first myths, right, is like that you have to be perfect for somebody to love you. That myth is not only false, but it's also harmful. Nobody is perfect. And trying to be will only bring forth disappointment and frustration. Trying to be perfect for somebody. Trying to put on a facade for somebody because that's the image of them that you think that they want to see from you, instead of giving your authentic self to them, right? True love comes from accepting each other's imperfections and growing together. I'll say that again. True love comes from accepting each other's imperfections and growing together. All right. So that's truly embracing the imperfection is what makes us beautiful human beings, that we actually know how to express that, how to deal with that. We learn how to deal with that. That's a beautiful part of learning yourself as well. So you're going to deny yourself when you do things such as emotional detachment, understanding that there's different type of lovers. There's an attached lover. There's a detached lover. There's a lover that might be a person that runs away as soon as love gets good. You know what I mean? As soon as things seem like it's going a little bit too good, this person is is a runner, is a track star, so these are the reasons why. Well, thank y'all. Hope y'all took something out of this, whether it's some kind of information. I hope you took something out of it that you can apply to your life with dealing with emotional connections. And if you have any kind of tips or maybe something of how you dealt with emotional connections, make sure you leave it in the comments below. Like, we're here to build community and try to help each other through a lot of different things that might have been trauma induced, and make sure that we supporting each other. So it might be something that you might want to share that might help you with dealing with vulnerability. So make sure you leave that in the comments below. And and thank you for tapping in with Connections Unplugged. Remember, embrace your vulnerability and let it be the bridge to meaningful connections. Embrace your vulnerability and let it be the bridge to meaningful connections, man. So we'll be back with another episode. And until then, keep those hearts open.